With the preseason over, yet the actual season 2 weeks away, I think it's a perfect time to get on one of my friends, one of the smartest fantasy football dudes out there, to talk some fantasy as pertaining to the Cardinals. Let's discuss.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter, Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen, free wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please go to the YouTube channel, search Locked On Arizona Cardinals, hit that subscribe button, man. You know the drill. Thankfully, the Clayton Tune experiment is over. We are looking forward to week 1, where we will see starters the next time the Arizona Cardinals play. Something else that will be seen if you aren't drafting right now is that man right there, Jason Moore, dude. Thank you so much for joining me. One of the triumvirate over at the Fantasy Footballers, #1 rated fantasy football podcast out there. How's it going, dude?
Going pretty well. I mean, this is an exciting, fun time when you're wrapping up preseason, you're getting ready for real ball. Fantasy football drafts are happening, but it's also an insane time. We're as busy as we ever get, and but wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, this is Christmas for 7 months, 6 months, and then it's going to be insane. So we'll get to the fantasy stuff. We'll get to Kyler. We'll get to Marv, Trey, James Conner, etc. You're an Arizona Cardinals fan, okay?
Yes.
For those that don't know, talk to me about your thoughts of this offseason from free agency to the draft and where we are in present time.
So while we'll get to Marv from a fantasy standpoint later, he is the story to me of this offseason, the lack of offensive maneuvering, you look at the draft, and it was like defense.
Yeah.
Well, okay, we'll get an offensive line, defense. It was just like the focus for the Cardinals is clearly to be a better team, and in order to be a better team, we got to be better on defense, offense, and special teams. And so the question here is, are we better on offense? And we very well could be better on offense just simply by Marvin Harrison Jr. developing into the true NFL wide receiver 1 that he's drafted to be, that he wants to be. And if he does that, our offense will take a step forward. If he doesn't, if he's a disappointment the way that, he didn't have a bad rookie season, but he had a disappointing rookie season. If that is year 2 replicated, then we're not going to be that good. I will say this, though. As a Cardinals fan, it has been many years. I'm not a homer type of guy. I haven't gone into the last few years thinking we were going to be good. A lot of people are like, last year, we're going to be good. A lot of rose-colored glasses. I am not that guy. I will say that this is the first year in many years where I'm like really excited for football because I think we could be a playoff team. I think we should be a playoff team, and it's like I'm thirsty for Cardinals games mattering again.
Yeah, man. I mean, so what I've said, just a little introspection into what I've been discussing with that topic specifically, is I'd feel duped if they weren't good. I feel like this isn't like, you're yearning for something, it's close, you get out of a toxic relationship, and the first sign of good, it's like, it's going to be good, we're going to get married. That's not. We're seeing concrete evidence that this team will be better than it was last year, and they should have made the playoffs last year if they would have done anything down the stretch. So I'm going to ask you this, going into year 7, okay, and we'll get to fantasy here in a sec, but I do want to get your thoughts on this. I'm now in the camp where it's like your quarterback doesn't have to be your best player. Jalen Hurts was the perfect game manager and got them to a Super Bowl. Does Kyler Murray have that floor in him, or are we seeing peaks and valleys and peaks and valleys and peaks and valleys in perpetuity?
No, he doesn't have Jalen Hurts' floor in him. He does not. We've seen enough years of Kyler to know what Kyler is, what Kyler isn't. Kyler is certainly an above-average NFL quarterback. If he were to go on, become an open free agent, some other bad team would spend as much money as any quarterback has ever been paid to sign him. He is a valuable asset, but I don't believe he is an elite guy. I don't think he's taking any team to a Super Bowl as long as his career is, including our, Cardinals that we love so much. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he develops further. And my only true hope is from a quote from Kyler this offseason. Kyler has a superpower. He has a superpower of running the ball.
Yeah.
He's a good quarterback. He's got a great arm. I don't know that his processing is elite, but it's not bad. He has an actual superpower of running the ball. We saw that with Jaden Daniels. We've seen it with Lamar Jackson, MVP. The aforementioned Jalen Hurts. And he had a quote this offseason, and it was from his mouth talking about how he wants to run the ball more, and specifically that he was looking at Lamar Jackson. And he saw what he did and what Lamar Jackson's legs were doing for Derrick Henry, and how Lamar running opened things up for their running game and things like that. There are games, Schottenheimer over in the Cowboys and our former offensive lineman that's now the Cowboys offensive coordinator, he said this offseason there were games Kyler just said he didn't want to run the ball. It's like, what?
Yeah.
You can't just be like, I don't feel like running or I'm hurt. You're an NFL quarterback with the superpower of running the ball. I know it's risky. I know it puts your body on the line. You're paid a lot of money to put your body on the line. This is football. Like, go out there and do whatever you could do best each play. Because as a Cardinals fan, I've watched everyone has. We've watched for years where there's just these plays where it's like, dude, first down's right in front of you. No one's – just run. You can get the first down over and over and over and over. And he really wants to be an excellent pocket passer and utilize the scrambles as like just a side thing, like an extra icing on the cake. That's not what he should be doing. That's not what Lamar does. Lamar's not out there like – Lamar threw for 4,000 yards and 40 touchdowns. He was an excellent passer, but he still does not have it be like, I'm a passer first, second, and third, and every now and then I'm going to run. Every other play is like, my legs are a weapon. That's part of why he's able to throw for 40 touchdowns and 4,000 yards, because the defense is like, crap, how do we guard this guy?
Yeah.
Kyler needs to do that. So if he's ever going to level up, and he can't do this 5 years from now when, his legs aren't the athlete's legs that they are today, like this would be the time. If he goes out there and week 1 he scrambles 8 or 9 times and he has 3 or 4 designed runs, I'll be salivating.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think he and Drew Petzing need to come to some sort of determination on what are the gotta-have-it plays with his legs. And they just don't – they seem to always be in the gray area. Like there was the one he housed against the 49ers. That was the perfect look this way, Kyler goes that way setup, and it's just got to happen more. I agree. So pivoting into fantasy here, what's Kyler Murray's ceiling as a quarterback?
Kyler Murray's ceiling is still a top 5 quarterback. You look throughout his career, he's been very good in fantasy, even though it's been a frustrating ride of late. You had obviously season-ending injuries that got in the way, and then he came back off of the injury for one of the seasons. I would say last year was pretty disappointing, even though he wasn't bad. He wasn't a bad fantasy asset, but very inconsistent. There were games, I remember we had one game, I can't remember who we were playing, but we beat the tarnations out of them. We scored 30-something points, and Kyler had one of his worst fantasy games of the year because it was James Conner, touchdown. And it feels like that's, Kyler doesn't need to be the offensive centerpiece for this team. So he can be. If he does all the running stuff that I'm hoping and that we're talking about here, then he'll be fantasy gold. But he doesn't necessarily have to take that on. And if he doesn't, he'll be inconsistent. Like, we've got consistency scores at the Fantasy Footballers. And last year, when he was the quarterback 10 in fantasy, so you go, oh, he was top 10 quarterback, good year. He was a C in consistency. He really only helped you 47.1% of his games were over the threshold that we've got as like a good performance from a quarterback. So I'm seeing, okay, it was against Chicago. I'm looking up the game. Like, we scored 29 points in a win by 20, and Kyler did not score 5 fantasy points. So it's like those type of games shouldn't happen. Hopefully they don't if he scrambles.
Yeah, I think he was quoted after saying he was just bored just handing the ball off because it was working. He wasn't doing anything.
I mean, as a Cardinal fan, I'll take that.
Yeah, for sure.
Great. Be bored and win by 20. But as a fantasy analyst, I'd like more.
Yeah, no, definitely. And let's pivot to the big 3 on the other side: Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride, James Conner. 2 is consistent as gravity. 1 TBD. Jason Moore, Fantasy Footballers, joining me. We will discuss that next. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by our friends at BetterHelp. These days, it feels like there's advice for everything: cold plunges, gratitude journals, screen detoxes, but how do you know what actually works for you? And with so much information online about mental health and wellness, it can be overwhelming to figure out what's true and what will actually help. And that's where talking to a licensed therapist through BetterHelp can make all the difference. You get real personalized guidance instead of just guessing based on, something you saw on social media or whatever. I mean, if you've been to therapy, you know that it works if you put the work in, and BetterHelp is there for you with it. Talk it out with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. At Jason FFL on Twitter, one of the triumvirate over there, the fantasy footballers do the best work in the business. I'm a daily watcher, so maybe check them out daily and then check me out daily and be an everydayer. Jason, let's start with the hard one first. Marvin Harrison Jr., as you mentioned at the top, is a conundrum in and of himself. I said going into when he got drafted last year, I'm like, he's going to be the third option. So people thinking that he's going to have Justin Jefferson numbers as a rookie may not be looking closely enough. And, I could have definitely been wrong there, but I ended up not being. Do you see 12 or 1,300 yards, 10-plus touchdowns, and 80-plus receptions from this guy this year?
It's certainly in the cards. Last year on our bust episode, I made the other two, because all three of us here on the show are Cardinals fans. We're here in the Valley. We live here. We grew up here. And I made them very upset because Marvin Harrison was my bust pick for last year's major bust show. And the reason was he was drafted at the back of the first round in fantasy football. Now, this was not a talent evaluation of mine. I think Marvin Harrison's one of the best wide receiver prospects that's come out in the last 5, 6, 7, 10, 15 years. You don't get much better than him as a prospect. It wasn't that I think he's going to bust as an NFL player. It was as a rookie, to pay off value in the first round of fantasy drafts, you have to be one of, the Justin Jefferson's rookie season. Obviously, that would have been a good pick. But it's like that's one of thousands of rookie NFL wide receivers. It's not the norm. This year, he's not a first-round pick. This year, Marvin Harrison is sitting there at the 3-4 turn, so he's costing you very little. And if you go, well, will he be better or worse than last year? Of course he'll be better. There's no way he is worse in his sophomore year with another year in the system, with the added muscle he's put on in the offseason. Like, will he be a top 5 fantasy wide receiver? I don't know. Probably not. But can he put up 1,210? Yeah, he can. Will he be better than he was last year? 100%. Does he cost anywhere near as much as he did last year in fantasy football? No. So personally, I think Marvin Harrison's a very good pick this year. His disappointing bust season from a fantasy standpoint as a rookie is why now this year you can get a good value on him. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I said, how'd I word? I said he had the worst version of a good rookie year. Like, that was the worst we're going to see him play. And the great things that we saw him toe tapping along the sidelines and in-patered or not, like, they're special there. And then it could be an indictment on Kyler Murray if he doesn't take that leap. And those are things that obviously we'll have to watch more about. James Conner, consistent as gravity, fringe wide running back one, talk to me about him with the massive uptick in running backs who do catch more passes than him. We're seeing 2 more pop up every year. Is he starting to dip to be like high-end RB2, or is he going to be low-end mid RB1? Well, he's going to be a low-end mid RB1 or a high-end running back 2 in fantasy, meaning he'll finish the season somewhere between running back 8 and running back 15. That's, outside of him getting injured, which, to be fair, that's the concern with James Conner. He hasn't always stayed healthy. He did last season. But in the Ultimate Draft Kit, which is our main, our product to go into your drafts set up for success, he's listed as one of the value picks in fantasy football. Because right now he's being drafted as the running back 19. He's in the 5th round in most drafts. So you're not sacrificing a lot to get a guy who last season was the running back 10 in fantasy football. And you go, okay, well, is it better or worse for him this year? On the downside, he's a year older, and on the downside, maybe they'll have Trey Benson a little bit more involved. But on the upside, the offense should be better with all the talk of Marv improving, and the defense should be much better. I mean, running backs are better when they win the game, when you're running out the clock, when you're scoring touchdowns around the goal line. That's the team that you want a running back on. If you look at top 12 running backs, they almost always come from teams with 9 wins or more, unless they're like just a pure pass catching running back. And so, yeah, the situation, I think, is even better for Connor this year. He's being drafted at his floor.
So is Trey Benson a must handcuff, or are there better handcuffs out there? Like, have you seen enough from Trey Benson where it's like, oh, he can step in and be 80% of James Conner from a fantasy perspective?
I think he can, yeah. I was pretty disappointed in Trey Benson as a rookie simply because coming out of college, like he was my number one running back before the Cardinals drafted him. It was a weak draft class, admittedly, but he was, I thought, my favorite prospect. It seems like he got it together. His vision is not the best, so I think he's got to like understand the system better and know where he's supposed to go, not necessarily like I see where to go. And once that started clicking, I think we saw a lot from him. If Connor went down, I think he's one of the better insurance backs in fantasy.
Agreed. Now, before we get to any sort of wild card on the roster, Trey McBride, tight end 1 for the next 5 seasons. Like, he's young. The older dudes, the skin is wilting off the snake, and there's a new skin being grown with all of these new younger dudes. Like, is he one to you, irrespective of your fandom?
Is he the tight end 1? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
No, he's not my tight end 1. He can finish there for sure, but Brock Bowers, what he did as a rookie coming into his second year, I think you've got to have him probably ahead. I also think George Kittle, who actually outscored both of those guys last year on a per-game basis, and now has no other, competing with Deebo Samuel like he was last year, and Brandon Ayuk won't be healthy to start the year. There's basically 3 good tight ends at the top of your drafts. Trey McBride is certainly one of them. He can absolutely finish as the number 1 tight end. You look at how good he was last year and that he didn't get touchdowns, almost impossible. Like, that's, we look at guys who scored more touchdowns than they should, and we make a big deal about it. Like, Terry McLaurin has been kind of a bust pick for us for a while. Very easy to see touchdown regression coming there. James Cook got 16 rushing touchdowns last year after, like, he had 4 combined the previous 2 seasons. It's like, I don't think he's getting 16 rushing touchdowns again. I don't think Terry McLaurin's getting 13 receiving touchdowns. But we don't talk enough about the opposite, where a guy who goes out there with 150 targets has 1 receiving touchdown. Like, that's not going to happen. So I don't think we've seen Trey McBride's ceiling necessarily, but I would say the bear case for McBride would be last year he was the clear number 1 for this offense.
Yeah.
Clear as day, target-wise, he's alpha. As a Cardinal fan, I don't want him to be alpha. I want him to be beta. I want him to be, I want him to be Travis Kelce, but back in the day it was Tyreek Hill who was number 1, and Kelce was the underneath, number 2. They were both awesome. That you can have a team with 2 great guys, but the hope here is that Marv develops into being the number 1 prospect. And also the worry with Trey McBride is in a lot of drafts he's in your second round. So you're giving up like really good running backs and wide receivers. If you're spending a second on Trey McBride, you're sacrificing maybe a Kyron Williams or Chase Brown at running back. You're sacrificing a T. Higgins, maybe if a Drake London falls. So that it costs a lot to grab him.
Is there anybody else on this roster that's rosterable?
No. We could. Oh, Michael Wilson is a quality wide receiver. He's a wide receiver too. Oh, Greg Dortch is a great NFL player for his role, and but not really. Like, fantasy, you get to play with all 32 teams, and when you're a fan first of a team and not a fantasy football fan first, then it's really hard to want, you focus too much on the Cardinals. You know so much about the Cardinals, you don't know a lot about the other teams. And that's kind of where you listen to a fantasy football podcast, you start to get to know all the players from all the teams that are relevant. And there's probably another team out there whose wide receiver, 2 is far more valuable than the wide receiver 2 on the Cardinals, like whether it's Michael Wilson or Greg Dortch, because really they're the wide receiver 3. Like, Trey McBride is the either number 1 or number 2 target. So there's not another player on the Cardinals that I'm really touching in fantasy unless I'm in a super deep league, like a best ball league where I'm going, 18 to 23 rounds deep.
Got it. And then, 30-second elevator pitch on the Arizona Cardinals defense with the level up. I mean, it's been bad for the last 2 years. Has it been good enough to make them top 10 fantasy relevant?
Yeah, for sure. They don't have a tough schedule. And they are a great defense to draft in the beginning of the year. Now, I don't stick with any defense all year long. I stream the position. I'm going to drop defenses. I'm going to pick them up. I'm going to play a couple weeks out, see matchups. But to start the year, I mean, the Cardinals start on the road against the Saints, and then I think they play
Carolina.
the Panthers. Yeah, so I mean, boom, bang, baby. You upgrade with our second-round rookie corner who's looked great through camp. You bring in Sweat. I saw a defensive line ranking from someone I really respect, and it was ranking all of the defensive lines throughout the league, and we were like 27th. And I was like, dude, you're wrong. Like, you're wrong. we don't have the Micah Parsons, the TJ Watt right now. We don't have that, but we are deep, and I think that fits Gannon's system. So I am excited about the defense. I think it can be way better than what most people think. I mean, you'll go through plenty of drafts where the Arizona Cardinals defense this year, they're not one of the defenses even drafted. You could grab them with literally the last pick in your draft. Wow. And I think the first 2 weeks, they're definitely going to be a top 10 fantasy defense.
Great stuff, man. Great stuff as always. Tell them where they can find you, Jason.
You can find us at thefantasyfootballers.com. I mean, our podcast is every day from now through the end of the year. So anywhere you're listening, Spotify, Apple, just search Fantasy Football and you'll find the Fantasy Footballers. Every resource we have available, our draft kit, everything else is on, thefantasyfootballers.com. Easy to find. Love it.
Love it. Best of luck this year with your fantasy leagues. And how many again? I got to know. I always ask.
It's probably about 8, but it's 3 I care about. It's 3 I care about, and then obligations.
That's not super offensive, though. That's not super offensive. I mean, I've had people being 15 or in the business. That's very adult of you. Alex
we want to care. We literally want to care about our league, so we try to not play in too many, or you just get burned out.
I love it, man. I will react to what Jason was talking about, especially Kyler Murray running the ball next. Locked on Cardinals, your team. The one and only Jason Moore. God, he's good, man. He's just an encyclopedia. I love having people on who just are chat GPT in human form about a topic. It's the best. Check him out, Fantasy Footballers, wherever you get your podcast, YouTube. I watch every day. I do. He had some interesting things to say. I think a couple were pretty clear before he was solidifying, Trey McBride status, James Conner, where he is. The Kyler Murray thing is fascinating. I want to take a few minutes here before we get out. The Kyler Murray thing is fascinating. So, Kyler Murray running the ball for the fantasy football world is fantastic, of course. Okay. He's never he'll have a couple games a year where he'll go bonkers with numbers, but he's never really been like a Josh Allen, obviously, or Lamar or whatever, just an absolute stat stuffer. He's been closer to Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts' passing numbers aren't usually nosebleed level, but his rushing numbers are usually pretty solid every week. That's the thing where Kyler, you got to figure it out. And it obviously terrifies you as someone just watching the team outside of fantasy football. But Jason brought up a good point. That's his superpower. That's what he does. And it's up to him and Drew Petzing to figure out the balance to where you can exploit opposing defenses a little bit more using his legs. And it doesn't have to be Lamar Jackson numbers. It doesn't have to be 8, 9, 10 carries a game. I don't think it's sustainable. But if you can get up to 4 or 5, whether they're design runs or, he has an RPO where he can read the defense well enough to take it on the back, to, go weak side and get opposing defenses off guard a little bit, that will unlock the rest of this offense. It just has opposing defenses having to do one more thing in preparation for the Arizona Cardinals, which is everything that's necessary for the Cardinals to win more games than they lose in 2025, especially when you're running it back on offense. The Marv thing is fascinating. I mean, I thought that Jason was going to laugh in my face when I said 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns, because 1,200 yards isn't that much, especially with 17 games. It's like 55 yards a game or something, just under 60. That's not a lot. That's not wide receiver 1 numbers. If he, and I talked about this a couple weeks ago, if Marv reaches his ceiling of 1,500 or 1,600 yards receiving and 10 or 12 touchdowns, you're talking deep playoff run. Because that means obviously that he and Kyler Murray have taken that next step. And that also means he's getting much more single coverage, which also means that other players on the offense are playing well enough to where they don't have to sag off in bracket coverage Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, it all works in synchronicity. And that's why with fantasy football specifically, like getting Marvin the third round with the upside of wide receiver one, not wide receiver number one overall, but fringe wide receiver one, that's where the value is that Jason was talking about. Fascinating stuff, man. And then Trey McBride, like Brock Bowers, I get it. I get it. George Kittle, I think, would still be tight end one for me overall. He's ageless, and he's like a bowling ball, man. He's the closest thing to he's the perfect mix of Gronk and Travis Kelce. And Trey is well on his way, but he's not there yet. Great stuff again from Jason Moore, Fantasy Footballers. Mina Kimes tomorrow. Alex Lancey, Locked on Cardinals. Remember, without you, there is no me. I will talk to you tomorrow with Mina Kimes.